Early in Middlesex, Cal Stephanides tells us that he was born twice. First as a baby girl named Calliope in Detroit in 1960, and then again as a teenage boy in an emergency room in 1974. It's a great opening line. It sounds like the setup for a story about transformation, about becoming. And most readings of the novel take it that way. But what Cal actually does for the next 500 pages is something stranger and more radical than a story about becoming. He narrates 3 generations of events he never witnessed. Think about the structure for a moment. A significant portion of this novel takes place in the 1920s in a Greek village on the slopes of Mount Olympus and then during the burning of Smyrna. Cal describes his grandparents Lefty and Desdemona, who are also brother and sister, falling in love, fleeing Asia Minor, arriving at Ellis Island. He narrates their inner thoughts, their private conversations, their wedding night on the boat. He does the same with his parents' generation in mid-century Detroit. The courtship, the secrets, the riots of 1967. All of it rendered with confident omniscience. And Cal knows this is impossible. He occasionally acknowledges it, admits he's guessing, imagining, filling in. But he doesn't stop. He can't stop. Because the novel's deepest argument isn't that Cal is intersex. It's that Cal is a narrator. And to narrate yourself, you have to invent everything that came before you. This is what most discussions of Middlesex miss when they focus on the intersex body as the novel's subject. The body matters enormously. But Eugenides made a formal choice that goes beyond representation. He gave Cal an impossible narrative voice, first person, across a century, and made the impossibility itself the meaning. Because Cal is someone whose body was always narrated by others. By the obstetrician who didn't look closely enough. By the parents who raised a daughter. By Dr. Luce, the famous sexologist who interviews teenage Cal and writes a clinical paper, categorizing and defining without ever asking Cal what Cal already knows. Dr. Luce is the novel's quiet villain, and not because he's cruel. He's brilliant, sympathetic, genuinely invested in his patient. But he has already written the story before Cal walks into his office. He needs Cal to be a case study that confirms his theory. That gender is primarily nurture, not nature. So he sees what he needs to see. He listens selectively. He writes the narrative, and his narrative has the authority of science behind it. And this is exactly what Cal refuses to let stand. The entire novel is Cal taking the narrator's chair away from the doctors, the parents, the culture that decided who Calliope was before Calliope could speak. But here's the cost. To narrate yourself, you can't start with yourself. You have to go back to Smyrna, back to the silkworm trays, back to the moment your grandmother's brother looked at her and something shifted. You have to construct the entire mythology of your own origin, even the parts, especially the parts, you can't possibly know. Eugenides frames this through genetics. The recessive mutation on chromosome 5 that produces Cal's intersex condition requires both parents to carry it, which requires the specific history of intermarriage in a small Greek village, which requires the specific catastrophe that sent that family to America, which requires all of 20th century history to align just so. Cal presents this as a kind of epic causation, a gene's eye view of his family's century. But here's what's quietly radical about that framing. It's a fiction. Not the gene. The gene is real. But the idea that you can trace a clean narrative line from a village in 1922 to a body in 1974, that's myth-making. That's Cal doing what every family does, making the present feel inevitable. The genetic explanation gives Cal's self-narration the appearance of science, of determinism, of objectivity. But it's not objective. It's Cal shaping chaos into a story he can live inside. And Eugenides knows it. He tips his hand in the way Cal narrates the Smyrna chapters, with novelistic beauty, with an outsider's romanticism, with details that feel imagined rather than inherited. Cal is writing a novel within the novel. He's doing exactly what Dr. Luce did, constructing a narrative that makes a body legible. The difference is that this time, the person inside the body is holding the pen. That's the real meaning of being born twice. Not the shift from Calliope to Cal, though that matters. The second birth is the moment you become the author of the first one. The moment you stop being a case study, a diagnosis, a daughter or son, a medical anomaly, and start being the narrator. And narrators get to decide where the story begins. Cal chose Smyrna. Cal chose the fire. Not because it's where the gene started, who knows where it started, but because it's the origin story he needed. Self-knowledge, Eugenides suggests, isn't discovery. It's composition. And sometimes the only way to finally know yourself is to write a history you can't possibly remember.